Hi, and welcome back to another Rise video. So you might notice that we're looking back at how to create a new character. And I know I said before that we were done with it, but I actually decided I wanted to revisit number 6 here, and that was to this gaining 8 points to spend in this level up or class tree. I've decided to come up with a few suggestions for new players, as well as people who have already made a character and are looking at, leveling up their character. So let's take a look at these suggestions, especially for a level 1 character. So first off, as I mentioned, that at level 1 you gain 8 total points to spend on this level up class tree. And then every level after that you get an additional 8 points, except for multiples of 5, where at 5 and 10 you get 12 points, 10 and 20 you get 16 points. So at level 1, there's a few recommendations that I have for new players. First off, you should always spend at least 2 points on increasing either your HP, movement speed, or MP, and that's depending on your desired play style. Really, really important to be spending points, especially on HP. I think you should spend, no matter what your play style is, at least 1 point on HP, and then, but probably you don't want to spend more than like 3 points on this stuff at level 1. Next, at level 1, you're going to want to be spending some points on a specialization or a talent of your choice. And again, this is going to depend on the play style that you want. If you're looking through the specializations and you're like, oh, that looks like something I really want, definitely pick the specialization. But keep in mind, the specialization is 3 points where a talent is 2. Specializations tend to be more combat focused, and talents tend to be less combat focused and more like a role-playing focus. So depending on what you want to do while you play, make that decision with where you're going to spend your points. Next up, I suggest spending 1, maybe 2 points on picking a new focus or upgrading a focus. And I really, really recommend picking a focus that is useful during combat. So let's say you decide you're going to be somebody who's using guns, definitely pick up the accuracy firearms focus. Or if you're casting spells, maybe elemancy spells, pick up the intelligence elemancy focus. It'll really help you make sure you're actually connecting those hits and you're not feeling like you've wasted a turn in combat. Oh, we scrolled down a little too much there. So finally, this is where I want to spend the most time here. This is spending remaining points on any relevant stunts and powers for desired play style. So let's take a look at some of these. And we're going to start with it. Maybe if you wanted to have some sort of melee damage or tank play style. Let's take a look at these abilities. So the first one of those recommendations is armor training. If you've seen me make any of my sample character videos, I very much often pick armor training. It's super important if you're going to be wearing any kind of heavy or even medium armor. Even the lightest, some of the lightest armors will require armor training. So armor training, what its use is, well, first off, you need to have 2 endurance, but its use is that it reduces the dexterity penalty of wearing armor by 1. And this is really important because dexterity governs your defense, and your defense is your ability to actually dodge an attack. So if you're, having that reduced dexterity, not only are you less able to dodge attacks, but, you're going to be then taking more damage. And the whole point of armor is that you're not taking as much damage. So you definitely want to take armor training. It's only 1 point. It's a very good pickup. The next one we're going to look at is charge attack. Now, charge attack, also 1 point, requires 2 strength. So you're going to need to have at least some strength. And charge attack lets you, as a major action, move up to half of your movement speed to attack an enemy in a straight line. So you're basically charging at an enemy. This is really important because if you're using melee weapons, you're not able to hit things from far away. And you might not have put a lot of points into your speed. So you might use your movement speed on your turn, then make a charge attack. It really just helps you get up close and actually be able to deal damage and do something useful on your turn. The next one we want to look at is weapon training. And weapon training goes under accuracy. Also 1 point. All of these are really good pickups for a low-level character. 2 accuracy is required. And this one, as long as you have the weapon focus for a weapon, you deal bonus damage by weapons of that type. So let's say I'm using bows and I have the focus for that. Let's say I have a +2 focus for archery. Now I get to do +2 damage every time I shoot an arrow. Really, really useful. And likewise goes for any of our melee weapons as well. I'm using a medium weapon. I have the +2 medium weapons focus. I'm dealing an additional +2 damage anytime I make an attack. Very good pickup. So let's take a look at the stunts for these as well. So the knock prone stunt is one of the first ones I was thinking of. Knock prone. I'd say either pick up knock prone or skirmish. So knock prone lets you basically, as a doubles or stunt. When you have 2 doubles points, I'm not going to show the full description, but you can knock somebody to the ground, and when they're knocked onto the ground, they can't stand up until it's their turn, so they have a penalty to their defense. It's easier for other teammates to hit them, and they'll have to expend their movement action just to stand up. Skirmish, on the other hand, allows you to move either yourself or your target 1 meter for every doubles point you spend on it. So it can be very useful just gaining some additional movement for yourself, or moving an enemy away from an ally that probably doesn't want to get hit. Also can be very useful. But I wouldn't suggest taking both knock prone and skirmish. If you're not keen on either of those, you can then pick up rock steady if you're more focused on, maybe being that like tank for the group. So picking up rock steady is a stunt costing 2 doubles points that just makes you immune to being knocked prone or skirmished or otherwise moved until your next turn. It can be very useful if you're really trying to set up that defense for your team. And then finally, if you have the ability, if you have the extra points, and you have the strength required because it costs 3 strength, I suggest picking up Mighty Blow. It's 2 doubles points, and whenever you attack with a melee attack, you can instantly deal an extra 1d6 damage. It can be very, very useful. So let's look at next the ones for ranged characters. So a ranged or even a stealth damage dealer, or any kind of support characters. These are ones that want to stay further back. So the first one we're going to look up here is Disengage, and Disengage is under Dexterity, and it's going to cost you 2 points, and it requires 3 Dexterity. But if this is the kind of character you want to play as, I really suggest getting Disengage. It is a stunt, so you can't use it all the time, and it does require 3 doubles points, but it allows you to immediately move away from a target that you're engaged with without suffering an attack of opportunity. So this is very good for 1, getting additional movement speed on your turn, and 2, you're not going to get attacked when you try to move away from somebody who's currently attacking you. So the next one we want to look up at is Pinpoint Attack. Now this one is definitely for those stealth damage dealers. So Pinpoint Attack, this is if you're making any attack from weapons that have 0 or no strength requirement, then you can deal penetrating damage when you land a sneak attack. Penetrating damage means you ignore their armor. So this is really, really useful if you're doing sneak attacks. The next one I would suggest is Speedy. Also under Dexterity. Speedy is only 1 point, you need 2 dex. Basically, it lets you either stand up or go prone by only expending half of your movement action. And you're like, okay, maybe that's kind of useful occasionally. Why would I want this? Now, I suggest picking up Speedy as soon as possible because Speedy can be upgraded. At the first upgrade for Speedy, it lets you ready as a free action. Now, ready means anything from getting out an arrow, taking out a potion, getting any action ready. So normally that would be a minor action. It lets you do more things on your turn. And that one's going to require 4 dexterity. You might not be able to get that at level 1, but it's really key to start building towards that. Especially with the second upgrade, it lets you sprint as a minor action, which lets you run up to double your movement speed. So really allowing for all this movement and actions that you're able to do on your turn. And then finally, Alluring Visage. Now this one's in Charisma. And Alluring Visage, it robs any creatures or targets that find you attractive of a single doubles point whenever they're attempting to make a stunt on you. This might not always come into play, but when it does, it might be the difference between getting knocked prone or getting additional damage dealt against you and being able to get away from something. Because if they only got 2 doubles points, now they only have 1 because of your Alluring Visage, and there's a lot less that they're able to do. If you're able to, I would pick up Unassuming. This is only if you're actually able to. You have the points available. You have 4 charisma. Unassuming is really key for these kind of characters because it makes enemies underestimate you in combat, and they will attack you last unless you attack first. And then Feign Weakness can also be a good stunt because it makes you seem like less of a threat. You're expending doubles points so that next turn that they're less likely to attack you. If you're going to pick up Feign Weakness, I would either get Feign Weakness or Taunt, depending on which one you want to pick. The problem with Taunt, yes, it costs less, requires less charisma, but you're taunting opponents so that it only is going to be useful if they are attacking you, and it will more often than not cause them to want to attack you. But if they do attack you, it does reduce their ability to hit you on their turn. You know, they suffer a -1 to be able to actually hit you. In addition to this, I might pick up the Pierce Armor stunt. depending on what you want to do. Again, this is 1 point, requires 1 perception, 2 doubles points, but it lets you ignore up to half your opponent's armor, rounded down with an attack. So if they have 5 armor, you pierce their armor. Half of 5 is 2.5, but we round down, so now they only have 2 armor when you're attacking them that turn. And then finally, the final stunt I might pick up for these kinds of characters is Defensive Stance. Now this is only 1 point, requires 1 dexterity. This is a really good stunt to pick up. Basically, you get set up for defense. You just gain +1 defense until your next turn. Defense, again, the higher your defense, the less likely you are to be attacked. It's way better to have the opponent's attack miss than take some damage. So this is a really good one to pick up. And then finally, let's look at some spellcaster stuff. So if you want to play as a spellcaster and you're deciding where am I going to be spending my points, number one thing I suggest, pick up some novice spells, at least 1 novice spell, especially if you haven't taken a specialization. Some specialization grant you spells at rank 1. Some of them won't grant spells until later ranks, and some of them never grant spells, depending on the specialization. But if you're choosing to cast spells, you need to take at least a novice level spell so that you can cast a spell. You can pick up this as many times as you want. I mean, if you have the ability, maybe if you've got 4 intelligence, take an adept level spell, but first, definitely get 1 or 2 novice level spells. Next, you might want to pick up the experienced mage power. And what this lets you do is it lets you, every time you cast a single spell in a combat encounter, it reduces the MP required to cast that spell again. So let's say you're casting a spell that costs 4 MP. You cast it once, it's 4. Next time you cast it, it gets reduced to 3. Cast it again, it gets reduced to 2. It'll never get below 1, but whenever you're casting the spell, it's making it easier for you to keep going during combat. And then finally, I would suggest a deep focus. That is a power within heart, requires 2 heart. This basically, if you're concentrating on a spell, you can continue that concentration as long as you take 3 or less total damage to your HP. Now you might be thinking, 3 damage? That's like literally nothing. That could always, I could be taking 3 damage all the time. Well, the bonus of this is that as you continue to level up this ability, look, now we're getting up to 6 and then finally 9 total HP while you're concentrating. Yes, this requires a significant increase to the amount of heart you have to put in, but as long as you start to take this early on, it'll make it much easier to pick up later on. And at early levels, at level 1, you're more likely to take less than 3 damage than you are at a higher level. Finally, some stunts you might want to pick up. Clear Mind. This is also in heart. Basically, it lets you steady your mind and gain +1 towards any one ability test you're making at this time. So as long as you spend 2 doubles points, you get to add +1 to any ability test. This honestly is pretty good for any character, but as a spellcaster, it can be good because it can help you kind of mitigate some of those other skills you might not have the ability to do because you spent a lot on spellcasting. Next up, you might want to pick up Powerful Casting. Now, this is kind of like Clear Mind, but specifically for casting spells. So for each doubles point spent, it increases your spell power by 1. So this lets your spells be much stronger. The difference between this and Clear Mind you might make if something, is attacking you and it makes you have to roll like an endurance stamina test. You're like, oh no, I didn't really invest in that. Well, as long as you have Clear Mind, as if you're getting doubles points, you might be able to succeed at a better rate at that thing. But this one, definitely for that increasing your spellcasting ability. And then I'd say there's 2 other stunts that I might pick up as a spellcaster. The next one being Mighty Arcanum, if you have the intelligence of 3. Basically, it's similar to Mighty Blow with the warrior, and it lets you inflict an additional 1d6 damage to a target of your spell. So as long as you've got those doubles points, you're dealing more damage. But this can only be used on spells that would actually deal damage. If you're using like a illusion spell, for example, that doesn't deal damage, is not going to magically start dealing damage to somebody, especially if it targeted yourself. No, this is only for already damage dealing spells that were targeting opponents. And then finally, perhaps you might want to pick up Lasting Focus, which is a stunt that increases the duration of any spell by 1 round. Sometimes spells might not gain much benefit. If it already lasts 6 rounds, increasing it by 1 isn't that great. But some spells only last 2 or 3 rounds, and this can be really, really useful, especially for those kinds of spellcasters. So, as far as what you're going to be spending your points on, you're definitely not going to spend your points on all of those things. You're going to have to decide where you want to put your points. And these are not requirements. These are just recommendations for how you want to spend your points. Obviously, if you're, come up with some unique or interesting character, you can spend your points however you want, but these are just some of my suggestions. I've also got just general level up suggestions for characters, whatever level you're at, whether you're going to level 3 or you're going to level 13. Some of these things can be very useful. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. This was a bit of a shorter video today. It was still about 15 minutes. Thank you guys so much. If you're interested in Rise stuff, please subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. Click the like button so you can see more videos like this. I'm going to be going on vacation next week, so I'm going to try to pre-record a lot of stuff. We're going to be looking at specializations, where I'll be showcasing a specialization every day next week. Thank you guys. This is Alex. We're looking at Rise. Bye-bye.